Spanking is one of the most barbaric things, and it doesn't really help the child learn why they shouldn't have done what they did. 9 times out of 10, unless it's just a badass kid, 9 times out of 10, you can sit down and explain to a kid why what they did was wrong. But most of the time, parents overreact because of fear of the child hurting themselves. So you overreact. You could have killed yourself. Okay, yes, they didn't kill themselves. Just explain to them how they could have. Try to be calm. Explain to them why they shouldn't do the next thing. The worst thing that my mother ever did, and me and her still argue about this all the time. She would say, don't do that. I would ask the very simple question, why? Not because I was being a smartass, because I genuinely am just a curious person and I want to know why. Why shouldn't I do that? Because I said so was her response. Worst response ever. Because you know what I'm going to do? Since you're not going to tell me, I'm going to figure it out. Some children aren't like that. Some children aren't curious, and every child is different. There's no manual to raise children, right? Because you can have multiple children come from the same two people and have completely different personalities. But you got to be able to read your children, understand your children. And once again, if you got childhood trauma, you might reenact that trauma and you're not even realizing it. Hypervigilance. Trauma survivors often experience hypervigilance, which can make them overly anxious about their children's safety and well-being. This constant state of alertness can be exhausting and affect their ability to parent effectively. I have a friend whose mother was just a hoverer. And my friend is severely anxious all of the time. And as she told me stories of her growing up and how her mother still calls her every morning, and if she doesn't answer at the time that she calls, her mother jumps into a panic. So that means she jumps into a panic and she misses that call from her mother. These are things that see, when I tell people, hey, look, you gotta make sure your stuff is in order before you have kids, because you can pass this on down to them. This is the stuff that I'm talking about. Another impact in approaching parenting when people have childhood trauma is difficulty trusting. Trauma can lead to trust issues, making it hard for parents to trust others, including their children. This can result in strained relationships and communication problems. Okay, I'll tell a story. My father graduated college very early. He was 16 years old, and his birthday is also in September. So that means that he was in college, not at 17, at 16 years old. He didn't do too well because that was a shock to his environment. He lived in a controlled environment with my grandfather being relatively strict from the stories that I heard. So he didn't do too well in college. Me being the first child of his, he immediately equated the fact that because he didn't do well, that I wouldn't do well. And that wasn't the case. I excelled in college. I excelled at being away from everybody. But he projected that on me. He didn't trust himself when he was in college, so he didn't trust me when I was in college. Me going through that made it easier for my brother and sister when they went to college. But that was a real thing. He fought me tooth and nail about the colleges that I wanted to go to. I couldn't go too far away. He would always say, you're going to flunk out. And I'm like, where are you getting this from? Like, why am I? Because he had flunked out. So he automatically didn't trust me because he didn't trust himself when he was younger. That was passed on. Postpartum depression. Women who have experienced childhood trauma may be more susceptible to postpartum depression, which can affect their ability to bond with and care for their infants. So the most important thing is understanding these impacts is crucial, providing support and interventions to help parents heal and develop healthier parenting practices. I just want people to be good parents out there. So as I was watching this documentary, I wondered to myself, because Vince McMahon's kids, Shane and Stephanie, have kids. He's a grandfather. And I wonder, Did they correct this childhood trauma that obviously that they were faced with growing up with their father who had childhood trauma from his childhood, generational trauma? And I wonder what their kids are like. If you are out there and you experience any one of those things that I listed that can cause childhood trauma, and you never dealt with it, and you think you're still good, just talk to a professional. Maybe you are, but maybe you're not. And isn't that question enough for you to go and check for yourself, especially when dealing with your kids? I don't know. Just a food for thought.
If you like that clip, go ahead and hit that like button. Don't forget to subscribe to catch up on all of our latest content. Don't forget to hit the notification button when you do subscribe so you can get updated every time we release content. We release content every day, whether it's an actual show or clips from the shows. So go ahead and subscribe, like, comment. Also, don't forget our Patreon page where you can find our Talking Straight-ish and After Hours Uncensored episodes. That's patreon.com/unsolicited perspectives. But once again, thank you again for listening to Unsolicited Perspectives. I'm your host, Bruce Anthony, and I'm going to catch you next time. I'll holla.